All right, we're going to move on then to Curriculum Advisory Council, Superintendent update.
Do you want to just finish this last one instead of coming back?
All right, you want it? Okay, let's do that.
You have attached the policy 6:310. Once again, this is just the first read. This has been out there for a while. Basically, as we're going through and establishing staffing and looking at our course guide, this was a policy that they made a change to last year in regard to foreign language credit, and we wanted to just clean some of this up. So Pam, myself, the department chairs, the department chair for student services went through this to try to make it a little more easier to identify things that students can get credit for and how they can get credit for things. Pam and I met again this morning to review a couple things based on some general questions, or some general questions that Mr. Walsh emailed in. We had one or two changes, but I would bring those to the Policy Council also when we work on 890. The biggest thing here is that we had to establish what credit recovery was and being able to do some of the distance learning and correspondence classes, and we put some requirements in there. And then the second part kind of broke those up so that if you wanted to take a course that's not offered at RB, there are some clear requirements that you had to meet, and who's responsible for the fees and how many credits you could earn, whether or not it would count towards your GPA or not count towards your GPA, some of those things. As petty as this may sound, it's important that we have clarifying that with some of these credit recoveries, and then if enrichment courses, that you don't have them. The credit recovery, I believe we said, will count towards the GPA, but the enrichment courses won't, because there's ways out there in regards to class rank that students will be able to take some online courses and receive credit for a course and help get a weighted grade to help drive up their class rank. And I have seen that happen at some other schools. So that's why we said, hey, if you wanted to complete your foreign language credit in Mandarin, and we don't offer Mandarin here, you know, I'm just using that as an example, you would fall under the enrichment and correspondence requirements that we initially laid out here. And it would talk about how you can earn credit for that on a pass-fail basis on your transcript, so that it wouldn't count towards your class rank, but it would count towards your graduation requirement and some of those things. And then we also referred to the policy recommendations from the IASB. So we had some of those things in there in regards to the military and the exchange programs. But we went through like the college courses and dual credit, the world language, the PE waivers, on-site summer school. So it's different, so that somebody doesn't go and try to complete English in summer school at a different campus and then not have to take the 18-week or the 36-week 2-semester course that we offer in English. So we had to put some specific things there down for on-site. So that's why we broke them off from off-site summer school classes and on-site summer school classes. Once again, first read. If there's some general comments or questions that you want us to take a look at in policy, or for Pam and I to review and then take to the Policy Council.
I have a question.
Sure.
How does this bode with the curriculum committee? And should we hold off on this until the curriculum committee has come up with a general plan? I don't know. There's some areas in here that may.
I don't see the for curriculum committee. Well, first of all, we got to correct ourselves. We don't have a curriculum committee. We have a curriculum superintendent's curriculum council.
Excuse me.
That I don't know if this directly aligns to, as much as it aligns to like that graduation committee, requirements committee that board ad hoc committee is looking at.
Okay.
That being said,
yeah,
the graduation requirement.
Yes.
I mean, I don't think this aligns right away with our general building curriculum or a specific course or something we're teaching. Where I think this could have to come back to this group for an additional changes is after the graduation requirements. I don't see that at the pace we're moving. That's going to be something that is definitely going to spill into next year, and who knows how long after that. So we have to have some of this in place, so when kids try to this summer maybe take a summer school course or try to take an online correspondence course, we have some clear things that will help us establish administrative procedures.
I challenge a little on your one point, Kevin, because
you know, the way the councils are broken out, when the curriculum council meets, John and Laura and you are there and Pam, and you have discussions about curriculum, which we don't hear. And then you bring it back to tell us about it. But when we go on a policy committee, I mean, it's one thing for Matt and Kevin and I to look at the policy on Boosters Club, because it doesn't really overlap with other things we do. But we've talked about it before, you know, if the policy really relates very specifically to one of the other councils, that we should find out. And I'm a little not understanding why all of them really don't relate to curriculum, because you're telling kids what class they can or can't take. But the one more specifically is the gym. You know, I would like to get some feedback, and again, if we want to just do it in a meeting of the whole, it's fine, of, you know, I've said it before, I'm not in favor of waiving gym, except for athletes who are already getting exercise, because, you know, kids need exercise, and it's a big problem. I mean, they need as much as reading and writing, if you ask me. So, but if you know, Pam comes back and says, you know, I've thought, based on my experience, or you have thought about it, this is really acceptable from a curriculum standpoint. All you're asking us then to do is kind of edit the document, not as a policy council, not really making a decision. I mean, let me put it the other way. What if Matt and I decided to look at this and said, you know what, we just don't like some of this stuff. You know, should we cross out enrichment and forget about the gym, no more gym waivers, and we don't want world class out, and we bring it back to everybody and say, well, we took those 3 sections out. I would expect people would say, well, what do you guys know about why'd you make that decision on the policy end of it? So that's the only thing I was pushing a little and struggling a little with, where I do see the subject matter as a curriculum subject matter.
I think under our current structure, it's not a committee, it's a council, so
Right.
it's just for me to kind of bounce ideas off of people.
Okay.
So that's why I brought it to the committee of the whole, because if we start doing councils, 2 board meetings, committee of the whole, it's starting to overlap, and then there's not time to play school. So instead of me having a separate council meeting to make sure 2 people are okay with the PE requirements, I'd rather us have this discussion at the committee of the whole.
Okay.
And give us some feedback, let us go back and look at how it works to what our kids have. You know, the other thing is with as the board establishes the policy, is this is an opportunity, this is why we have these committee of the wholes, is that you can ask some of those questions. And that's why I let Pam work on this with the guidance department, because who else is going to see when kids sign up for summer school or try to get other transcripts in, or so they provide that kind of feedback to the administration. So that's why I don't think sitting in with just the 4 of us, it might be better for the 7 of us, and then Pam to go back to the leadership and to the department chairs. And so that's why we've been kind of working on this behind the scenes for a while now.
Well, then I will just ask for consideration if we're going to talk about it again. One is to explain why Kevin did on the one. You know, in essence, it seems like a lot of the requirements should be similar for all of them, like whether they count grade or whatever, if you could kind of address that. And the second one is I would like to hear from the professionals, you know, why do we waive gym for band, and why do we waive gym for
Right.
students who aren't in a sport for academic purposes? I would, before I approve this policy, I'd like to know what the rationale is behind it, because, you know,
So
again, I need to be educated. Without that, I would say, no, let's not waive gym for band.
I'll talk
or
to
that.
the PE waiver, and if you want to talk about the question about the consistency, some having different requirements than others. You can go first.
Okay, originally, what our current policy does right now is it follows your organization, the IASB's example, but it doesn't work practically or make much sense. For instance, it says if you take a virtual or online course, you can't take one that's offered at the student's high school, but if you can take a correspondence course that's offered at the high school, which
Right.
doesn't make much sense.
Right.
Virtual classes can be more robust and rigorous sometimes than the other, and so, or that you have different offerings, and so the idea was we started seeing, and sometimes off-school, off-site summer school is really important for a student and valuable. So why, it categorized all of them differently in a different rules form. So what we really did is I talked to the counselors and the department chair of the counselors, and we discussed how is the policy blocking us from doing what's best for kids. And they said there are two reasons that students would take a correspondence, a virtual class, or an off-site summer school class, and that would be for credit recovery or enrichment. And they're two very different scenarios and should be treated differently. And Kevin addressed the students that sometimes augment their transcript for class rank and take advantage of and try and put things in. And some other schools have had problems with that. We're not trying to discourage the enrichment courses, but we're saying you can take them. If you want them to appear on our transcript, there'll be a limit of 2 of them. They can appear on the RB transcript as a pass-fail. We encourage students, if they want the grade to go out, they don't want it just a pass-fail, they want the grade to show, to send a parallel transcript when they're applying to a college or a university, which is very acceptable to do. So if you've taken a summer program somewhere and got a grade for it, or an online class, you can submit your RB transcript and your other transcript to show, and that's actually the colleges and the universities look on that favorably. So it doesn't really disserve those students who want the enrichment opportunity. For credit recovery, you're basically looking at students who failed or transferred into our school and just haven't accumulated enough. They're not going to finish on time. And so we're trying to let them, give them other opportunities to do it. It doesn't matter to us. Sometimes it's correspondence, sometimes it's virtual. We don't care. Go and take an off-site summer school class if you failed it here and tried it. So we're trying to do different things with those students. They're in a very different scenario. And that's why it's written differently. So for those students, they need the credit. Obviously, they're not going to graduate in time if they don't have it. And I hope that kind of clarifies the difference. And the current policy has really blocked us, because I have taken every request and I've put it through the policy, and I've stuck to the board policy, and it's given us some odd things we're doing with kids that we don't think is in their best interest.
How does that speak to the gym, or maybe you?
Kevin's going to.
I'm going to speak.
Kevin will address that, and then if you, I'd be happy to answer anything further too.
When Tim talked about the curriculum committee, and we have the curriculum council, we have this odd configuration. Our board policy allows for a curriculum committee, but we certainly don't have to have another meeting. Just like a small school within a school, there might be times during the year when a portion of the cow could be devoted to this little sub-meeting, like a curriculum meeting. So if you wanted to talk about maybe, and then during that time, the co-chairs of that meeting might say, I think it's valuable that we'd have the teacher from, the gym, people who are experts in gym and physical fitness, present something, and then we discuss it as part of our vision or other aspects, and they don't have to be all the time, but that would probably also encompass some of the other things and some of the policies. And
I think exactly what you're talking about is another agenda item on here.
okay,
So I think we could maybe hold on that.
but I mean, that's a thought. So like Tim was saying, to have this committee, but to give it a little more life in the cow. So it's not another meeting,
Right.
but then it has a place.
I would agree, and I think it's on here about
Okay.
board meetings. But I mean, that's something I think we need to establish as a whole group, as well as probably through a retreat. Like, if we don't have these committees, and the councils are truly for me to call when I think I need them,
Right.
then the majority of the work should happen at the cow, or in subcommittees of the cow. So
Right.
I think that's something we need a little help on. In regards to the PE, it's
Can I
sticking
ask
to.
two more questions of Pam on
Sure.
what she covered? Again, I'm just trying to understand it. Independent study, we require 3.0 GPA, but we don't require that for enrichment, college dual, world language. Is there a reason?
Yes.
that- And let me ask the other one too, because you can answer them both at the same time. If I can remember what it was. Oh, the limit. We limit enrichment, right, to 2 courses? But we don't limit, world study or college or independent study to 2 courses. So that was my point on why. Could you just explain a little why one we have a GPA, others we don't, some we limit to 2, others we don't.
Certainly. The independent study, and we haven't funded that for this year, and we're not funding it for next year because
Oh.
that,
It's an additional stipend in the contract.
it's an extra cost to do that. But these are for students who've already proven that they are taking that content very seriously and they've performed well academically to move further in their study in an area, go beyond what we offer in the curriculum and create almost their own project or something they're working on, a piece of research, or going to a different level of a course we don't offer. So for the amount of work and time it is for the teacher, for the cost that it used to be incurred by the district to fund that, they had to be a serious student. And so this is something that's been in the policy in the past that the board had maintained, that in order to fund it, that there would be an expectation you have at least a 3.0 in that course, in the sequence of studies. If you're doing it in the science department, or if you're going further in a world language, then you've topped out or whatever. That was the expectation there. As far as the max amount of courses, dual credit is basically limited by its very structure, that they don't have that many courses that are offered, that we either have teachers here that have followed through with a certification and the kids can take the class here and get credit at Triton, or the courses there that our students don't go in mass numbers. So I asked the question, historically, why didn't we limit the amount of credits? Because we don't have students that really have been partaking in it, so it's a non-issue and they've never put a limit on it. So it's just that our students, as you saw with the data that was presented, that Kevin presented a few board meetings ago, our students just aren't doing that. And so if we had it in large numbers and we were concerned, you might want to put a limit on it, but it's never been an issue. And that was the historical perspective I got on that. The word language, many of these are taken from the state school code and what's allowed and what a school should offer to students. So the American Sign Language program, an approved ethnic school program, you are expected as a school to transfer those credits in. And so they don't put a limit on it in the code, and we've just patterned that. And again, that's in your IASB guidelines. They didn't put a limit on it either.
Thank you.
I have a question with regards to world language. In the other areas, we specifically identify that the student's responsible for fees. In that area, are we responsible for the fees?
We could definitely add that language in there. That's taken outside of the school. We're just transferring that credit in for something that's not offered here. So we could specify that. That's certainly possible.
On the world language, we don't say that they can get credit for taking, to use Kevin's example, somebody wants 4 years of Mandarin or 2 years of Mandarin, like from Triton, or a recognized institution. Are we prohibited for including something like that, or can we also include that?
Superintendent has the right to increase the requirement.
Okay.
It's for the enrichment, so that would fall into that second category. Right now, we're putting 2, but if a kid came to us and said, I'd like to do 4 years of Mandarin,
Yeah.
and we don't offer that, and he can prove that he's going through a North Central Associate, all that, I would have the authority under this policy to say you are allowed to do 4 years of credit, and we will allow that on your transcript and stuff like that.
What about like maybe a language Russian, that we don't offer?
She's looking at the world language, not the...
But he said it would fall under enrichment.
Enrichment, I mean, if the student did that and they passed the proficiency exam, I think we would have to honor that as a credit towards the world language.
The world language course, this came up a few years ago, and as many things do, through the legislation, they have somebody that, a senator or a representative, supports a bill, and this one was, the students were taking these foreign language study, perhaps at a Lithuanian school. We have several students who've transferred credit in from the Lithuanian school. And so the State School Board of Education, that school the particular one I'm talking about in Lamont applies to the state of Illinois, to the Illinois School Board, and gets approval that they're like an accredited course. And so then this policy came as a result of it, and it was sent out to the schools through your organization to make sure that we were recognizing that if somebody comes to us, a student comes to us and says, I'm taking this class and and it's approved through the state school board, we should accept those credits. So that's where some of that came. The class on Mandarin, that Mandarin Chinese that Kevin was referring to would be under an enrichment course. You could take it correspondence, virtual, or somewhere off-site during the summer school, and then we would transfer it in.
What about if somebody wants to take a 4-year language course in something we don't offer, like Japanese, or because they're interested in doing business, or Russian? Can they take these courses at Triton and get credit for them, be recognized as having, a full 4 years in that language?
That's a dual credit agreement between Triton, and that's actually, they just gave us the new list of courses, and so that's something that we just sent. We're sending a representative, a counselor, Mike Reingruber, is going on Friday. The new list just came out. They do that with all the schools that feed into Triton, so it's beyond just us. It has to be on their list. They have to approve it, and then then we can accept it. But that's something we work with them in collaboration and with the other schools.
All right. Now how about physical education?
PE. I've seen the board has a right to establish their policy. The state allows PE waivers for the following. I would address your attention to the bottom 4, where it's numbered 1 through 4. I don't think we want to address 1 and 2 below that, where it's regards to special ed.
No.
The 2 that I have seen that have drawn some attention is the marching band, and then the number 3, enrollment in academic classes that are required for admission into an institution of higher learning. That's kind of become pretty vague, and that, in my previous district, that drew a huge amount of attention because it allowed students to say, hey, technically any kid could pretty much advocate that any course they wanted to take is something they could use for higher, pursuing a degree at a higher institution or pursuing an area of study. And I've seen it more as an issue in regards to districts that have a cap on credits, because students that wanted to pursue the fine arts or applied arts and go into 4 years of studies had trouble fitting that into their schedule because of the PE requirement. So I think that's why eventually enough discussion had gotten this into the waiver process in the school code. I have seen districts that have strictly limited to the semester where the student was involved in a varsity sport and or needed it because of credit recovery reasons or for reasons not allowing them to graduate were the only 2 ways they could waive out of their PE requirement. I've also seen districts who have said PE will be a requirement but not a grade towards your GPA and class rank. It'll be a pass-fail class. So I have seen districts take different approaches in regards to physical education, as well as because of the push from on the national level of child obesity and physical fitness. This is what was in the IASB recommendation. This is what this board has previously followed. If this is something that the board wants us to pay attention to or begin to add to maybe this graduation requirement committee, that's something we can do if we want to make that. In regards to the waiver process, you can waive out a PE under Illinois School Code. You have the right as a board to say how we want to do that or implement that.
Could you clarify 2 things? And one is, maybe I misread 3. We used to let students waive out, like to take AP classes. You don't do that. So they've got to be something that's required under 3.
I do not let anybody waive out for AP classes or because they need a study hall because they have too many AP classes or they want to get out for work. So I've stopped all of those waivers.
Okay, so, and the second one is, because I'm ignorant of marching band, do kids get comparable exercise in marching band do they do if they're in gym?
Yes, from a former marching band parent. Yes, they do, but they only get that in the first semester, in the fall semester.
Okay, what about in the spring?
not allowed to waive out of that credit.
Okay,
Oh.
anything else?
And this gym is exactly as the policy stands in this first read.
Right.
Yeah, this is a current
That's-
practice.
That's
Right.
current.
Right, so there's no changes to that whole section.
No, sir.
So this might be something that, should we, coming up, want to have a subcommittee called curriculum, we might want to look at that. And the board might want to say, but we believe in physical education, and maybe recommend to not have these other two, except in extreme cases.
Well, I think what Pam just touched on in Tim's answers is, what's unique to this is to make sure that the administrative procedures to manage this policy
To follow.
are being followed. So we're not allowing kids that are in marching band to waive out of their second semester PE.
Okay.
And she's not allowing kids, because she has to sign off as the building principal on their waivers. So
Okay.
she's not allowing kids to sign off just to take a study on AP course.
Okay.
So I don't know, I mean, I think you want to leave, as you always mentioned, to leave some flexibility in the policy so that the administration can manage it. I think it's a matter of making sure the administrative procedures are managing this accordingly.
But if we have 3 and 4, and it's just a question, can a parent come and say, but your policy allows for this, and my student needs that?
Well, I could address how I've seen 3 implemented. It would be if somebody is getting into, they got accepted to, you know, or they're intending to go into pre-engineering or something, and they needed a course and they were filled up or something. I mean, they had to get it to get into their university. It's a very rare instance, but it's, you know, you can waive them out if the university required it, or they're going overseas into a university and they required some unusual course, and the student would come to you and say, I am going to need this class my senior year, or I couldn't get into this program. I've seen a few cases like that, but it's really rare, and that the university says you need this course and you don't have it. We can't consider you for admittance. And that's how I see number 3. But you're right, the way it's written, it seems like people could come for any course, like
I think
Dr.
one thing that
Smith
would
said.
definitely help, and maybe we can do, I would recommend, I can do this for the board, because Pam has been sharing some of this information with me, but I think what we should do is, I will look at the form we're using for a PE waiver to administer this policy, and I'll make sure that it addresses the 4 different categories so a student has to check off. And what I think we should do is look at, over the next year or 2, is how many kids are waiving out of PE and for what reason. And if it brings the attention to the board that, hey, we got a lot of kids bailing out of this PE class because of, you know, we're administering number 3 too lenient, or you know, we're doing spring semesters when we shouldn't do in spring semesters, then I think that would call for a reason to maybe put this, but I think let's start tracking this for a little bit before we start saying, let's look at eliminating it. Is the board okay with that?
Yeah,
Let's see how many kids are waiving out of PE and for why.
You can see Pam right now is policing it,
I believe it.
you know what I mean?
Well, then I'm reading this as a gigantic loophole. I think all you need to do is say specific institution. You just have to add that one word,
Yeah.
and the policy's fine. I think that's all you need to do.
Okay. Yeah, I've taken a note on that. That's a great suggestion. Thank you, Dr. King.
All right, anything else on this one?
I had one, is there an overall limit on number of credit hours? Because it says up to 2 credit hours for enrichment. No, there's no limit there. But on the course recovery, there was a maximum of 2.
It's on both of them.
Yeah.
Oh, and for the enrichment, they can only have 2. So that would be 4. Is there an overall limit?
Again, it's the superintendent's approval. If
Okay.
we have a student in a particular circumstance, the way it's written, it allows the flexibility to be merciful if you need to, or creative if the situation warrants it.
Okay.
But I can't do it. He has to approve it. Because it's a board policy, I would bring it to him.
Okay. All right,
Policy good?
let's go to